Dear Minister, dear Xavier, my dear friend, it's a great pleasure to welcome you in Cyprus, especially as 2024 marks an important milestone for the Republic. It's 20 years since our accession to the European Union, and soon we will be celebrating 55 years since the establishment of diplomatic relations between our two countries. Today we had the opportunity to have a very substantial and fruitful discussion on a range of issues. First, on bilateral relations, we agree that there is great potential and opportunities to further expand the close cooperation of our two countries in the fields of education, culture, and investments. These are areas that we could have further development for the mutual benefit of both Cyprus and Luxembourg. In addition to that, we need to work on the people-to-people and business-to-business ties, and on this we'll be looking into ways of actually making this practically implementable. We also discussed briefly on the Cyprus question, and I would like to take the opportunity to thank Luxembourg for its consistently principled stand as regards the Cyprus problem, a position that is guided by public international law and aligned with the UN Security Council resolutions for a bizonal bicommunal federation with political equality as described by those very resolutions. Third, we discussed issues of common interest. We are both member states of the EU, both trying to make our presence bigger than our size, geographical or population-wise. And we believe that the future of the European Union requires that we remain fully committed to those values that underpin our common family, and we should never take for granted what we have achieved all these years. The threats are there, the challenges fully remain. Finally, we discussed the situation in the Middle East, in our region. The developments are deteriorating. There are severe consequences from further escalation, whether that relates into Lebanon or into Gaza or even the West Bank. We once again call for the release of all hostages, for an immediate ceasefire, and for all sides to show maximum restraint. Diplomacy must prevail before more innocent lives are lost. Cyprus will continue to work with friendly countries in that direction, trying to send the right messages. And Xavier will be visiting the region in the next few hours, and this is, I believe, a very important opportunity to send those very clear messages. A brief word on yesterday's decision by the Israeli Knesset on UNRWA. UNRWA is indispensable. It's extremely valuable across the board: Gaza, West Bank, East Jerusalem, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan. The work of this UN agency is mandated, the work that is mandated to do, including delivering vital humanitarian aid in Gaza, is imperative, and the international community must do whatever it can so that that continues. Finally, Ukraine reaffirmed our commitment and support to the sovereignty, territorial integrity of Ukraine, always in alignment with the EU policy. Dear Xavier, once again, I welcome you to Cyprus, to Nicosia. You are a true friend of Cyprus, a valuable voice of reason in Brussels in our meetings, and I look forward to continue our discussion later on at the university. Thank you.
Dear Minister of Foreign Affairs, dear Konstantinos, thank you so much for welcoming me in Cyprus. It's the second time I'm visiting Cyprus. I came as a Prime Minister a few years ago, and happy to be back as Minister of Foreign Affairs. I think this visit is also the signal of not only have political relations, but also friendly relations, but also sharing values. And it's important to raise this topic of sharing values, of sharing a goal of maybe not being the biggest by size or by populations, but being the one listening, trying to understand, proposing, mediating, and being there. We can't choose our neighbors, but we can build our future. And this is what we are strong in. And so thank you so much for being able also to have discussions afterwards with students, because I remember a few years ago we had in Europe all bit everywhere, you know, these rencontres citoyennes, these exchanges with the populations to speak about Europe. But we think afterwards, okay, these discussions has been done, so everything is perfect. No, it is a permanent discussions that we need also with our citizens to explain why Europe is also so important. We think that everything is granted. We think that everything is granted. And my country is the one who knows that through multilateralism, through work together with the others, we get stronger. I grew up in peace. I grew up in peace. I studied in Greece, in Panipestimos Aristoteliou Saloniki. That's impressive, but that's all. This is Europe. That I was able to come here. That I'm able to pay in euro. That I don't have to ask myself, do I need a health insurance? Nothing. That we forget everything Europe brought us. And this is why I'm so passionate to be able to speak also to Cypriot students about Europe. And that maybe some of them just didn't know when they are 20 years old today. They just knew Europe. They didn't know when we switched on our phones. Usually the first message we got, it's, you reached the data's limit. You need to extend. This is all Europe, but this will be the next talk. So celebrating 20 years of EU accession, but also 55 years next year of diplomatic relations between both countries. And on the 3rd of March, and I will never forget that date, it's my birthday, we celebrate the union of these diplomatic relations between both countries. And as you just said, it is important to, and we saw that the commercial figures could raise a bit. So it is important to see also with our Chambre of Commerce and the Ministry of Foreign Trade, I will see also with our Chambre of Commerce if there is an interest also to grow and to have more exchanges between both countries. I know that it's, as I told you before, I grew up in peace and also in knowing that with my neighbors we want to build something together. I know also that this country is divided since 50 years. And we know that there will just be, we will continue to support you. And you told me as a Prime Minister, but also as Minister of Foreign Affairs, that we need a peaceful negotiation, a bizonal, bicommunal federal solution based on international law. International law is the backbone of an international community. And I know that the United Nations is not always the easiest solutions, but it's the place where we need to have these discussions and also the implementation of the solutions that we have. It's, today I will also meet the Committee of Missing Persons. Imagine, still today, people not able to say au revoir, adieu to someone, because they still have not the bodies. Imagine. And this is in Europe. We want to say thank you also for your support for the Middle East. You are closer than we are, but you're also the bridge between the different partners. And I really appreciate what you just said about the UNRWA. And I will go in a few hours to Israel and tomorrow to Palestine. And for me it is important to, as you said, that without the UNRWA, when you've been to Palestine, you have to know that without UNRWA there is no education, there is no health, there is no food. And we will continue to support the UNRWA. And I will meet the President of the Knesset, I will meet also the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Israel, also the Prime Minister in Palestine, and we will visit also the UNRWA. And we won't cancel the UNRWA meeting because of the decisions of the Knesset. It is important to continue. There is no alternative if you know the situation on the ground, also for the Palestinians. And we would like to say thank you also for all the efforts to provide this much needed humanitarian aid for the people in Palestine. I really want to thank you for the commitments. And as you said, we are maybe not the biggest by size, but we are very often linked, and not linked because of size or because of populations, but because of values. And it is important to remind these values. And that when we see what's happening not that far away from here, we should realize how maybe not the biggest country can be useful to bring bigger countries together. And we have, for the moment, the situations in Ukraine, because we speak about the Middle East, but we should not forget the situation in Ukraine. What will be the impact also of the North Korean presence now in Ukraine? What will be the situation in a lot of African countries? What will be the situation in the Middle East? We have as many conflicts as we haven't seen for a long time. And it's our duty as politicians trying to avoid conflicts and not to provoke new conflicts. And I trust you, dear Konstantinos, but also to your president. I just met this morning. Thank you for the time it took also to be able also to speak to both. Because it is important to speak to both parties in all conflicts. And as we just discussed before, in Palestine and in Israel, it's terrible that we are now nearly hostage of having to say that we are in favor of the one or in favor of the others, when we are in favor of peace and of civil population. So thank you so much also for your balance. I know that you don't have the questions for the moment of recognition. We discussed about it. This is on the table in Luxembourg, but we need a dynamic, and we need the first thing and the most urgent thing is a ceasefire. Because every day we continue, we are just killing hope of the new generations and provoking new generations of hate. And this is what we have to avoid. Thank you.
Minister Kombos, maybe one question from Luxembourg. How would you qualify the bilateral relations between our two countries right now?
As my dear colleague said, the numbers are not telling the truth in this situation. They are presenting a picture of economic activity that is not in any way responding or corresponding to the level of the relation. And this is what we should be working towards. There are very similar economic models in terms of our two countries, and there are, in my opinion, opportunities of cooperation and synergies in all that. But beyond that, at the political level, I would characterize the relation as excellent. We couldn't have asked for a more consistent friend, both in Brussels and broadly. And as Xavier has said, it's all because there is a joint core of values that is acting as a compass for both countries. International law, dialogue, diplomacy, this is what has been driving us, and trying to do whatever we can in problem situations, in crisis. Everyone has a role to play, and sometimes the smaller countries can have an input and a contribution that by far exceeds their size in terms of population or geographical size.
This is addressed to both gentlemen. Building on what you said earlier about the EU being active in the region, there's a question, or at least there's some ambivalence of public perceptions regarding public perceptions about the EU's role in peace-making, peace-building in the Middle East. That the engagement is not as it should be for a bloc of 27 countries. And I just wanted to ask either of you what you know as a bloc. What is the EU? What specific initiatives is the EU taking to bring about peace in the region? And what will you tell both your Palestinian, Israeli interlocutors, Mr. Minister?
You spoke about the bloc, but there is no bloc. There is no bloc. Foreign policy is unanimity. So the bloc is shrinking to common positions. And the smallest common agreement is the smallest possible decision. Because we are divided. We are divided. It would be a shame to tell you that Europe is now united on these questions and we have the same position. We are united. We are united both because we know that we need a ceasefire. We are both united because we know that we need a two-state solutions. But I can tell you that around the table I will have people who will say that there should not be two-state solutions, there should be, etc. We are united on this, but foreign policy for the moment is unanimity, and so the European influence is very small on the ground. So in fact, for the moment, we play more firemen to reduce the fire, the impact of the fire, than being able to get rid of the fire. That's the reality on the ground. And this is what I try to explain. How do you want to explain to a young Israeli that he needs to be okay with the Palestinians and with Lebanon and with Iran when he still has some families who are hostages from Hamas? When there are still risks of Hezbollah rockets coming to Israel? But how do you want to explain to young Palestinians, to young Lebanese, that Israel is a friendly country when he just buried his parents, his sister, his brother, or his daughter or son the day before after the Israeli attack? So I understand Israel who wants to live in security, that they want to get rid of the Hamas and the Hezbollah. This is legitimate. I would be the same in my position if I would have a terrorist organization as neighboring country, as neighboring neighbor. But on the other hand, how do you want to say to Palestinians, when the UNRWA is forbidden, when yesterday he got education from the UNRWA, over, you can't get educated anymore? When the attack was there because someone of the Hamas lived close to it, and your parents were killed because they lived close to him? So we need a ceasefire, but we need also from both sides steps. We need from the Palestinian side. At the beginning, when my first visit was in Palestine, I told them, when are you condemning the attack of the Hamas? When are you saying as the Palestinian authorities that the attack of the 7th of October are not okay? It took time. This is not acceptable that the government in Ramallah is not condemning the attacks of the Hamas. But then also, how can you be supportive of the release of the hostages? Not only watching, but be active in the release of the hostages, because the release of the hostages will be an important step in a ceasefire. When are you going to organize new elections? When you will have a leadership where you will be able to have a government having power over Palestine? These are the first things. But on the other side, to the Israelis, they need to understand that they can't now, by forbidding the UNRWA, by bombing, they get support from the people. They are just provoking hate, also from both sides. So I can tell you what is my position. And so we had the discussions about the recognition and all these different steps. I don't want to do symbolism. I want to have an impact on the ground. And if I'm not able to have it as the European Union, we should have it as an international. That's why, for example, I discussed also with Japan, with Korea, who did not recognize Palestine yet. Why we should have this coordination with other countries to have an impact on the ground. You know, the woman who buried her children yesterday in Gaza, she doesn't care about recognition from Luxembourg or not. What she wants is ceasefire and a peace project. And the peace in Palestine will be the security of Israel. One will not exist without the others. We need both. I'm sorry, I was a bit long, but you see,
I'll be very, very brief. The European Union has failed to actually play the role that it can play in terms of its presence, in terms of its capacity to influence the geostrategical situation. This is for a number of reasons. One is the fragmentation or the divergence within the member states. That's an issue as well, but there is also sometimes a kind of cacophony between the institutions. So third parties hear the European Union and they are hearing different things at different times. At the end of the day, the result is that the EU is not, in my opinion, as influential as it should be, and as influential as it could be. And this is something that we need to address. We need to address it. In the meantime, at the bilateral level, as member states, everyone is trying to do what they think is better, and this is something that is important as well. We are trying at the bilateral level to achieve things that we could have or should have done as an entity, as the EU. At the end of the day, what matters is the outcome. And the outcome right now is that we need the ceasefire. We don't have it. We need humanitarian aid to flow in. We don't have it to the point that is needed. We need the release of the hostages. We don't have that either. So this is a very difficult task, and it's getting more difficult every day because there are events happening on the ground that could escalate the situation even further. And this is not a situation where it's just a repetition of what we experienced in the past. This time is different. I need to respond to the challenge and to the difficulty that that entails. Okay, thank you very much.
Ευχαριστώ πολύ.